How did your production skills develop throughout this project? As shown on my blog, on the Research, Cover, Contents and Article page, my production skills have developed greatly throughout this course. This is through Photoshop, research skills and my website. As I am new to media studies this year, I started the course with no media skills at all. Since then, I have come a long way. Pre-production and production work is something I've never done before. This project helped me realise how important casting, location scouting and costume is in an effective magazine. In addition to this, it also gave me an insight into how things are done in the media industry. When doing my first photo shoot, I did a lot of research before the shoot, determining who I was going to use as the crew and the models, where I was going to take the pictures, what time they were going to be taken and what outfits the models were wearing. I also had an idea of what poses I wanted the models to do. When starting my production, the images that I took had both strengths and weaknesses. The strengths being, due to my planning, the models' outfits and location looked effective. The main weakness of the shoot was that due to the settings on the camera that I used, the model's face was out of focus due to the focus of the camera being on the background instead of the foreground. Because of this, I had to do another photo shoot, but this time in a photo studio. This took away part of my time that I was planning on spending on post-production work. From this shoot, the photos came out a lot clearer. One way my production skills developed throughout this project is through photography. Before the assignment, I didn't know what the different settings on a camera meant, so when I made the camera mistake on the first photo shoot, I corrected it in the second. Another way I developed my production skills is by increasing my knowledge on the equipment that is used in photo shoots. In this shoot, I used 3-point lighting, a green and white screen, and a reflector. To make sure that my photo shoots are effective, I have learned about framing and depth of field. Something that also increased my production skills is my research skills. My knowledge of magazines of a similar genre to mine is massive now, but for this project I had a rough idea of the codes and conventions of a magazine, but not knowing the media names for them. However, this project has helped me to increase my knowledge on how magazines break these stereotypical conventions and how the codes and conventions attract their chosen target audience. I also gained a lot of knowledge on the layout and conventions of a contents and article page. This was very useful as I didn't know the codes and conventions of these two pages, but with the help of my research, it made my productions successful. Furthermore, my Photoshop skills improved tremendously. Before this project, I didn't have any idea on how to use Photoshop. However, during this project, I learned how to do many things that made the final product look professional looking. This was thanks to YouTube tutorials, experimentation, and lessons with my media teacher. Before I had started my production work, I had a weekly session with my media teacher who taught me the basics of Photoshop, such as what the tools and the sidebars mean and how to place one image in front of another. After these sessions, I was then able to start working on my productions. I used experimentation when trying to find the right filter or opacity on a certain section, or when I was moving the cell lines around on my front cover. An example of me using experimentation is in the text box underneath the main image on the contents page. In addition to all this, I also used YouTube Photoshop tutorials. I watched several videos on how to retouch my model's skin. To practice this, I used a close-up photograph that I wasn't going to use in my project. The video I mainly used for this was called Retouch, Airbrush and Smooth Skin Professionally in Photoshop. At the beginning, it took me nearly 2 hours to retouch my model's skin as I had to follow the tutorial very closely. Now it takes me less than 10 minutes to retouch someone's skin with no need to use the YouTube tutorial. This beauty retouch skill allowed my magazine to fit standards of beauty in the media industry and follow conventions. It will also appeal to my target audience more, which will increase sales due to my audience buying the magazine for identification, which is according to Blumler and Katz's uses and gratification theory, and self-esteem from Maslow's theory of a hierarchy of needs. Having models that fit the beauty standards of the media industry will make my audience think that if they buy my magazine, they could be like them, and so encourage purchases. A part that I found interesting on Photoshop is the clone stamp tool, which I use to erase the model on the left on my contents page. Moreover, my Photoshop skills with text have increased significantly throughout this project. At the start of the year, the way I used to add text was a very simplistic way, as I was only just getting used to Photoshop. I use this way when making my front cover. For my contents page and double page article, I used a much quicker and easier way as there is a lot more text. Over the course, I also learned how to change the font of the text, change the font colour, add any text effects, and change the size and width in between words, as well as the spacing on the text as well. You can see evidence of me changing the font of the text on the masthead on the front cover. You can also see evidence of me changing the text colours with the anchorage text on the front cover and the storyline headers on my contents page. I learned all of this through experimentation as well as the weekly sessions with my media teacher. Another production skill that I have developed is my Weebly website. Before the course, the only experience I had with Weebly was a few years ago, so when starting this project, I had forgotten most things. When I started making my website, I didn't use many effects on my text, and I only inserted a few images. As the course progressed, I started to use more of the text effects, such as changing its colour, making it bold, and adjusting the size. I also have added a lot more photographs. These are mostly screenshots from Photoshop and that show the process I took that got me to the end result. Another feature that I have added onto my blog are YouTube videos. These videos are of my CCR's questions 1, 3 and 4. This is a more effective way to display YouTube videos as it's more visual than a YouTube link.